Will God cast newborn babies into hell to burn forever? Absolutely not. In this study, we will learn that hell is used to represent the grave. The church has designed all kinds of fake doctrines to teach that God is a monster who will cast newborn babies into hell to burn forever. Unless, of course, they reach the fictitious age of accountability, which incidentally is taught nowhere in the Bible. The truth is, there is no literal hell consisting of literal lakes of fire or literal worms that never die. Man created these fake doctrines to promote the idea that we can become saved by accepting Jesus, as opposed to God choosing us before he created the world, which is a repulsive idea to mankind. Now, a simple study of the Bible will show that the word hell is often translated as grave. Okay, so let's take a moment to look at a few verses where God uses the word hell. For instance, in the Old Testament, in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 11, we read, "Hell and destruction are before the Lord. How much more then the hearts of the children of men?" So we see here that the word hell is associated with destruction. In other words, when we die, God destroys our soul and our bodies if we're not saved. The same truth is articulated in the New Testament, namely in Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, where we read, "And fear not them which can destroy the body, which are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him that is able to destroy both soul and the body in hell." So we know that God gave Satan permission to afflict Joel, to afflict him with grievous sores in his body. But he does not give Satan the power or the ability to destroy our soul. Only God has the power to destroy our soul in hell, which we're going to see simply points to the grave, where we cease to exist when we die. On the other hand, if we are saved, our souls will go immediately into heaven when we die. There is no such thing in the Bible as purgatory. That's another fake doctrine of the church. So in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8, God declares what happens when a true believer dies. "We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord." In other words, God is simply saying, when this physical body dies and is placed in the grave, the soul of the true believer goes immediately into heaven. And then at the end of the world, some aspect, which we really don't understand, of his body will be raptured and caught up into the air and will be changed in a twinkling of an eye. And this language is found in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 52, where we read, "In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruptible, and this mortal must put on immortal." Okay, so with all that in mind, I'm going to give you a list of Old and New Testament verses where God uses the word hell as the word grave. In the Old Testament, the word hell or grave is the Hebrew word Sheol, and it's used in Psalm chapter 18, verse 5, where we read, "The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me." So here God is saying that hell is identified with death. And then when we look through all of these other verses where God uses the word grave and hell, we see that they are the same thing. Likewise, when we look at the word hell in the New Testament, it's the word the Greek word Hades. And in Revelation chapter 20, verse 14, we read, death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. That word hell is also found in 1 Corinthians chapter 55 or 15 verse 55, where we read, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? So in both instances, God is equating hell or the grave with death. It is the second death that the unsaved will experience when they die. The first death that they experience occurred in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve rebelled against God, and God said, if you eat of that tree, you will surely die. And so from that point on, all men die in Adam, as we read in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 22. In short, the Bible does not teach that God is a monster who's going to cast newborn babies into hell to be eaten by literal worms or to be burned by fire forever. There is no age of accountability. There is no purgatory. And the Bible most certainly does not teach that we can become saved by accepting Jesus or being sprinkled or baptized with water. Our salvation is based 100% on the fact that Jesus' soul was not left in hell because he was resurrected by the power of God. And so it is through his death and resurrection that we have the hope of salvation. In this regard, God says that we cannot come to Jesus unless the Father draws us. And all that the Father gives to Jesus, he will raise up on the last day.